Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are tackling a subject that feels um, incredibly permanent.
Right.
It's one of those things that if I asked you to picture it, you'd probably picture something ancient. Stone ruins, timeless art, history that goes back to the Caesars.
Mhm.
We are talking about Italy.
It is deceptive, isn't it? It's kind of the ultimate historical optical illusion.
Yeah.
When you think of Italy, you think of the Colosseum, you think of the Renaissance, you think of the Vatican.
Yeah.
You assume the nation itself must be the bedrock of Western civilization.
Exactly. I mean, Rome is the eternal city. It feels like it's been the capital of Italy forever.
Right.
But if you look at a map from, say, 1850,
Which is not that long ago.
not at all. My great-great-grandfather was alive then. There is no Italy.
No, there isn't. There's a peninsula shaped like a boot. Sure, geography doesn't change. But politically, it was a ghost. It was just a fragmented collection of rival states, duchies, kingdoms.
And a lot of them were controlled by foreign powers.
Oh, yeah. Austria, Spain, France. They all had a piece of the pie.
So, the Italy we know today, the political reality of the Italian Republic, is actually younger than the United States. It's younger than the steam engine.
Significantly younger. We are looking at a unification process, the Risorgimento, that really only coalesced in 1861.
It wasn't even fully complete then.
Not at all. Geographically, not until 1870. And if you ask some historians, the project of making Italians went on well into the 20th century.
And that's our mission today. We're going to unpack this Risorgimento, which, let's start there. What does that word actually mean?
Literally, it means the resurgence, or rising again.
It's a very romantic, loaded term.
Oh, totally. It implies that the nation wasn't being created from scratch, but that there was this sleeping giant, this ancient soul of Rome, that just needed to be woken up.
It's a great marketing pitch. We aren't building something new. We're bringing back the glory.
Exactly. But as we dig into the sources, we're going to see that the reality was a lot messier than just waking up. It was a collision of ideologies, wars, backroom deals.
And honestly, the cast of characters here is unbelievable. I was reading through the background notes, and it reads like a screenplay.
It really does.
He's got a diplomat who's playing 4D chess, a general who looks like he walked out of an adventure novel, an idealist who keeps getting thrown in prison.
And a king who somehow manages to ride this tiger without getting eaten.
It really is a dramatic story. It involves secret societies, assassination plots, guerrilla warfare.
Oh, yeah.
And
Because it's Italy, a lot of opera.
of course. So we have a massive stack of historical records and encyclopedic accounts to get through. So let's dive right into the status quo. Let's go back to the board game. The year is 1815. Napoleon has just been defeated at Waterloo. The European powers meet at the Congress of Vienna. What does the map of Italy look like?
Well, to understand 1815, you have to understand what happened just before. Napoleon had swept through Italy, and for a brief moment, French rule just destroyed the old feudal structures.
Right.
They introduced modern laws, efficient administration, and they planted the seed of nationalism. They even created a Kingdom of Italy in the north,
Though it was a French puppet state.
the client state.
Yeah.
But still.
So they gave the Italians a taste of what it could be like. They showed them, hey, you don't have to be 20 different little countries.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
then Napoleon falls. The Congress of Vienna in 1815 hits the reset button. The European powers, Austria, Russia, Prussia, Britain, they want to turn back the clock.
They want to pretend the French Revolution never happened.
They restore the old absolute monarch
So they chop the boot back up.
ruthlessly, and they hand the pieces out to safe conservative rulers. Let's look at the map post-1815. In the north, you have the Kingdom of Lombardy, Venetia.
Okay, and this is the wealthy part of Italy.
Yeah, the industrializing part, Milan, Venice. And it is directly controlled by the Austrian Empire.
So German-speaking overlords running northern Italy, that's got to create some friction.
Immense friction. You have to imagine Milan was a sophisticated city, and yet the police were Austrian, the judges were Austrian, the censors were Austrian. You paid your taxes to Vienna. It was an occupation.
And Austria's influence didn't stop there, right? It kind of bled into the other states.
Oh, absolutely. The Austrian chancellor, Metternich, who is sort of the arch-villain of this story from the Italian perspective, he made sure that the neighboring states were run by Austrian puppets.
Like where?
The Duchy of Parma, the Duchy of Modena, the Grand Duchy of Tuscany. The rulers were all Habsburgs or Habsburg adjacent.
Metternich is the one who famously said, Italy is a geographical expression.
Right. He was completely dismissing it. He was saying Italy isn't a nation, it's just a label for a peninsula on a map. And he wanted to keep it that way.
Okay, so the north is effectively an Austrian parking lot. What about the middle?
The center is the Papal States. And this is a massive chunk of land cutting right across the peninsula from Rome all the way to Bologna. And it was ruled by the Pope.
And we aren't talking about a spiritual leader sitting in the Vatican giving sermons.
No, no, no. We are talking about a temporal king. The Pope had an army, he had police, he had tax collectors.
So it's a theocracy.
A full-on theocracy, and the administration was run almost entirely by the clergy.
And based on the sources, it wasn't exactly a well-run machine.
It was notoriously corrupt and inefficient. There were very few railways, heavy censorship, a really repressive police state. It was often described as the most backward government in Europe.
So if you're a liberal in the 1840s, this is your nightmare.
Absolute nightmare.
And the South?
The South is the kingdom of the two Sicilies. This covers Naples and the island of Sicily. And it was ruled by the Bourbon dynasty, specifically Ferdinand II and later Francis II.
The Bourbons. So that's a Spanish and French royal family, right?
Yes. So again, you have foreign influence. And the Bourbons ran a very conservative, absolutist regime.
I remember that quote from the British politician William Gladstone.
Oh, yeah, it's brutal. He visited Naples and famously described the government as the negation of God erected into a system of government.
That is a brutal review.
It was a harsh regime. The prisons were full of political dissidents. The poverty was staggering, especially compared to the industrializing North. It was essentially a feudal society that had survived into the 19th century.
So where was the hope? If you're an Italian patriot in 1820, where do you look for leadership? You're surrounded by Austrians, priests, and Bourbons.
You look to the northwest, the Kingdom of Sardinia.
Piedmont Savoy.
It's often called Piedmont Savoy. It included the island of Sardinia, but the power center was Turin in Piedmont, and it was ruled by the House of Savoy, an indigenous Italian royal line.
And that becomes the engine of unification.
Eventually, yes. They were the only state with an independent army and a foreign policy that wasn't dictated by Vienna. But in the early days, the resistance wasn't coming from kings, it was coming from the underground.
The secret societies. I love this part. This feels very Da Vinci Code.
It does a bit.
Tell me about the Carbonari.
The Carbonari, or charcoal burner.
Charcoal burners. Why that name?
It's likely a reference to their trade, or maybe a ritualistic symbol, burning the wood to create the fire of change,
Right.
or purifying society like charcoal purifies water.
Okay.
They were a secret network, very similar to Freemasons, but with a specific political goal: Italian nationalism and constitutional government.
And they were fiercely anti-tyranny.
Extremely. They popped up in the South first, but spread everywhere. They had secret handshakes, passwords, complex initiation rituals. They were the bogeyman for the Austrian police.
And they were pretty hardcore, right? I read in the notes that they were involved in assassination plots.
Oh, they were serious revolutionaries.
Yeah.
The most famous incident involving someone from this world, though he acted sort of independently, was the Orsini bomb plot in 1858.
Let's unpack that because it's a crazy story. Felice Orsini.
Felice Orsini was an Italian nationalist who decided that the biggest obstacle to Italian freedom wasn't necessarily Austria, but the inaction of France.
Okay, why France?
He believed Napoleon III, the Emperor of France, had betrayed the cause. Napoleon III had actually been a Carbonaro in his youth.
No way. So Orsini thought he was a sellout.
Exactly. So Orsini decides to assassinate him to trigger a revolution in France, which he hoped would spill over into Italy. It's a bit of a bank shot.
Yeah, that's a few steps.
He and his accomplices traveled to Paris. They designed these very sophisticated bombs filled with fulminate of mercury.
And they attacked the emperor.
Outside the Opera House in Paris, they threw 3 bombs at the emperor's carriage. The explosion was horrific. It killed 8 people and wounded over 140.
Wow.
The carriage was shredded.
But the emperor?
He survived, virtually unharmed.
That seems like a total failure. You kill bystanders, you fail to kill the target, and you get arrested.
It should have been a failure. But here is the twist, and it shows you how strange history can be. Orsini is sentenced to the guillotine. But from his prison cell, he writes a letter to Napoleon III.
He doesn't beg for his life.
No. He begs Napoleon to help Italy. He writes, "Sire, do not reject the prayer of a dying patriot. Free my country, and the blessings of 25 million people will follow you."
And Napoleon listens.
Napoleon III was a complex man. He was genuinely moved by the letter. He allowed it to be published in the papers.
Really?
Yes, and it seems to have guilt-tripped him, or at least politically motivated him, to finally put the Italian question at the top of his agenda.
That is wild. a terrorist attack that actually leads to a diplomatic breakthrough.
It set the stage for everything that followed.
So we have the map, which is a mess. We have the spark, which is this lingering memory of Napoleon and the tricolor flag.
Right, the green, white, and red.
The symbol of resistance.
It was banned. To wave it was a crime.
But for a revolution to work, you need leaders. And the source material highlights this cast of characters that fits almost perfect archetypes. You have the soul, the brain, the sword, and the king.
It really does feel scripted. Let's start with the soul. Giuseppe Mazzini.
Mazzini, the idealist.
Mazzini was a Genoese writer and political activist. He started as a carbonaro, but he found their rituals too silly and their lack of central direction frustrating.
So he strikes out on his own.
He does. While in prison, because he spent a lot of time in prison or exile, he formulated a new plan.
Young Italy.
La Giovine Italia. It was a political movement founded in 1831. His motto was God and people. Mazzini was a Republican. He didn't want a king of Italy. He wanted a unified, democratic republic with Rome as its capital.
He seems like the guy who keeps the flame alive when everything looks dark.
He was the intellectual engine. He believed unification was a divine duty. He wrote, he agitated, he organized insurrections.
Most of which failed.
Miserably, yeah. Most failed. He spent most of his life in exile in London, dressed in black as if in mourning for his divided country. But he kept the idea of Italy on the table. He made people believe that being Italian was a real thing, not just a geographical accident.
Okay, so that's the soul. Now we need the brain, the guy who actually gets things done. Count Cavour.
Camillo Benso, Count of Cavour, the Prime Minister of Piedmont, Sardinia. And he is, in a way, the polar opposite of Mazzini.
Mazzini is the romantic poet. Cavour is the CEO.
That's a great way to put it. Cavour was a modernizer. He traveled to Britain and France. He loved railways. He understood banking. He believed in free trade. He wanted Piedmont to be a modern European state.
Was he a revolutionary?
Not really. He was a pragmatist, a classical liberal. He wasn't necessarily dreaming of a united Italy from the Alps to Sicily, at least not at first. His primary goal was expanding the power of Piedmont.
And kicking the Austrians out of the north.
I'm driving the Austrians out of northern Italy. He disliked republicanism. He wanted a constitutional monarchy.
And he realized something crucial, right? That Piedmont couldn't do it alone.
Correct. The lesson of 1848, which was a year of failed revolutions across Europe where Piedmont tried to fight Austria and lost badly, was that enthusiasm isn't enough.
Right.
The Piedmontese army was small. The Austrian army was massive and professional. Cavour knew that to beat Austria, he needed a big brother. He needed an ally. And he set his sights on France.
We'll get to his big diplomatic play in a second, but we have to introduce the third character, the sword, the action hero, Giuseppe Garibaldi.
Garibaldi is arguably the most famous man of the 19th century. He was a global celebrity. If there was Instagram back then, he would have had the most followers.
He's the guy on all the statues.
Yes. He was born in Nice, and that's a crucial detail. Nice was part of the Kingdom of Sardinia at the time. He was a sailor, joined Young Italy, was sentenced to death for a failed mutiny.
And he fled to South America.
Right, and that's where he gets the Hero of Two Worlds nickname.
Okay.
He spent over a decade in South America fighting in wars of independence in Brazil and Uruguay. That's where he learned guerrilla warfare. That's where he formed his Italian Legion and adopted the red shirts.
Which was an accident of logistics, right? Not some grand design.
Yeah. Pure accident. The government of Montevideo had a surplus of red woolen tunics intended for slaughterhouse workers.
For butchers.
Yeah. Garibaldi needed uniforms for his Italian Legion. He took the butcher shirts, and a fashion icon was born.
I love that. The iconic red shirt was just surplus butcher gear. And he even lived in New York for a while.
He did. After another failed revolution in Rome in 1849, he went into exile again. He lived in Staten Island, New York, around 1850.
What was he doing there?
He worked in a candle factory with the inventor Antonio Meucci. Can you imagine? The future liberator of Italy dipping candles in New York City.
It's wild. So you have the idealist, the diplomat, and the warrior. And finally, the king, Victor Emmanuel II.
The Padre della Patria, father of the fatherland. He succeeded his father, Charles Albert, after that disastrous defeat to the Austrians in 1849.
What was he like?
Victor Emmanuel was rougher. He liked hunting and women more than politics, perhaps, but he had a crucial quality. He was a symbol.
Why was he so important?
He was the only Italian monarch who maintained a constitution after 1848. the Statuto Albertino.
Every other ruler tore theirs up.
Exactly. They all went back to absolutism. Victor Emmanuel kept the parliament. That made Piedmont the sanctuary for every persecuted patriot in Italy. If you were an intellectual running from the Pope or the Austrians, you went to Turin.
So we have the pieces on the board. Now we need the action. Let's move to Section 3 of our outline, 1859 to 1860, the years where everything changes.
It all starts with Cavour's master plan. He needs to provoke Austria into a war so that France will come to Piedmont's aid.
Okay.
He makes a secret deal with Napoleon III at Plombières.
This is the real politic moment.
It is. The deal is, France helps Piedmont kick Austria out of Lombardy and Metz. In exchange, Piedmont gives France 2 territories, Savoy and Nice.
Trading land for help. That's gold. Cavour is giving away the cradle of the dynasty in Savoy.
And Garibaldi's hometown, Nice. It shows you how desperate he was to get rid of the Austrians. Cavour starts mobilizing troops near the Austrian border. He stages military maneuvers. He just drives the Austrians crazy until they finally issue an ultimatum.
Disarm or else?
And Cavour rejects it.
A trap is sprung.
It snaps shut. Austria invades. France jumps in. This is the Second War of Independence.
And it's not a skirmish. These are massive battles.
Huge. The battles of Magenta and Solferino. Solferino, in June 1859, involved 300,000 men. It was a bloodbath. The heat was intense. The carnage was awful.
This is where the Red Cross comes from, isn't it?
Yes. A Swiss businessman named Henri Dunant just happened to be there. He saw the aftermath, thousands of men dying in agony, crying for water, rotting in the sun. He was so traumatized, he organized local women to help and later founded the International Red Cross. That's the scale of the horror.
So they win. They push the Austrians back.
They win Lombardy, which is Milan. The road to Venice is open. But then Napoleon III gets cold feet. Well, the war is unpopular in France, the casualties are horrific, and Prussia is looking threatening on the Rhine.
So he just bails.
He ghosts him. Without telling Cavour, Napoleon III signs an armistice with Austria at Villafranca.
What does that mean for the deal?
It means Austria gives up Lombardy, but they get to keep Venice. Cavour is furious. He resigns in protest.
He comes back, though.
Oh, he comes back shortly. But the deal stands. Piedmont gets Lombardy. France gets Savoy and Nice.
And this must have driven Garibaldi crazy. Nice is his hometown.
Garibaldi was incandescent with rage. He felt Cavour had sold his birthplace to foreigners. This created a permanent rift between the sword and the brain.
So what does he do?
He wanted to go blow up the ballot boxes in Nice, but instead his attention was diverted south.
To the expedition of the 1,000. I'm Amel. This is the movie script moment.
It really is. May 1860, there are uprisings in Sicily against the Bourbon King Francis II. Garibaldi scrapes together a volunteer force, about 1,000 men.
What kind of men are we talking about?
Not professional soldiers. Students, doctors, artisans, lawyers, wearing red shirts, carrying bad muskets. They steal 2 steamships from the port of Genoa and sail for Sicily.
And they sail to Sicily to take on a kingdom that has an army of 150,000.
It sounds like a suicide mission.
Yeah.
Cavour actually thought it was. He didn't officially support it, but he didn't stop it either. He figured if Garibaldi failed, he could disavow him. If he succeeded, well, that's a different problem.
So they land at Marsala.
They land at Marsala on the west coast of Sicily. They march inland. At Calatafimi, they meet the Neapolitan army. It's an uphill battle. Garibaldi's men are outnumbered. His officers tell him to retreat.
And this is where he says that famous line.
Garibaldi famously replies, "Here we make Italy or we die."
Goosebumps.
They win. It's a shock victory, but it rallies the local Sicilian peasantry. They see Garibaldi as a liberator. The Bourbon army, suffering from poor leadership and low morale, just begins to collapse.
And he takes the capital, Palermo.
After fierce street fighting, yes.
And he doesn't stop at Sicily.
No. He crosses the strait to the mainland. He marches up the Boot. The resistance just melts away.
He takes Naples.
He enters Naples, the capital of the South, by train. He didn't even have to fight his way in. The king had fled. Garibaldi is greeted as a messiah.
So now Garibaldi is effectively the dictator of southern Italy. And this creates a massive problem for Cavour and the king of the north.
Real. Huge.
Yeah.
Because Garibaldi is a Republican at heart, influenced by Mazzini, and his slogan is Rome or death. He wants to march on Rome and take out the Pope.
And why is that a problem? Wouldn't taking Rome complete the set?
It would bring the French back in. France was the protector of the Pope. If Garibaldi attacked Rome, Napoleon III would send the French army to crush him.
And possibly crush Piedmont, too.
The whole unification project could unravel.
So Cavour has to act fast.
He has to outmaneuver Garibaldi. Cavour sends the Piedmontese army south, marching through the Papal States, carefully avoiding Rome itself but taking the eastern territories to intercept Garibaldi.
This is the showdown. The regular army meets the revolutionary hero. The meeting at Teano.
October 26, 1860. King Victor Emmanuel II rides out to meet Garibaldi near Teano. This is the moment of truth. Does Garibaldi fight the king to establish a republic? Or does he submit?
And
Garibaldi rides up, takes off his hat, and hails Victor Emmanuel as King of Italy.
just like that.
He says, "I obey." He hands over the South to the king.
That is surprisingly humble for a guy like him.
It's tragic and noble. Garibaldi sacrificed his political ideal, the Republic, for the sake of Italian unity. He asked for nothing in return, refused titles, rewards.
What did he do?
He packed a bag of seed corn and sailed back to his rocky island farm on Caprera.
What a legend. So effectively, Italy is made.
Effectively. On March 17, 1861, the Kingdom of Italy is officially proclaimed. Victor Emmanuel II is the king.
And Cavour.
Cavour dies just 3 months later. Exhaustion, fever, probably malaria. Talk about finishing the job just in time.
What were his last words?
Reportedly, Italy is made. All is safe.
But was it safe? Because Section 4 of our outline is titled The Aftermath and the Messy Reality. It sounds like the happily ever after wasn't so happy.
It was incredibly messy. You have to remember, this wasn't a federal merger of equals like the United States or Germany.
Yeah.
This was, legally and practically, an annexation by Piedmont.
Piedmontization.
Yes. They took the Piedmontese constitution, the Piedmontese tax system, the Piedmontese legal code, and they just pasted it over the entire peninsula.
And I imagine that didn't go over well in the South.
It was a disaster. The South was agricultural, poorer, with different traditions. Suddenly they were hit with high taxes and conscription laws they weren't used to.
And the North looked down on them.
Totally. With a colonial mindset. Northern politicians and generals often describe the South as corrupt, barbaric, or uncivilized.
The source material mentions they felt they were imposing Piedmontese morality on barbarians. That's harsh.
It led to a reaction. We call it brigandage, but that's a dismissive term used by the state. It was essentially a civil war in the South that lasted for years.
It's a civil war.
Local uprisings, loyalists to the Bourbons, angry peasants. Yeah.
How big was this conflict?
The new Italian state had to deploy 120,000 soldiers to the south to suppress it. That's half the army.
Half the army.
More people died in the brigandage wars than in all the wars of unification combined.
That is a staggering statistic that gets left out of the glorious narrative.
What's that?
And this created the Southern question, right? The question meridional.
Yes. The deep economic and social disparity between North and South that, frankly, Italy still wrestles with today. The North industrialized, the South stagnated.
And then there's the Roman question. We said they avoided Rome to keep the French happy. But the Pope must have been furious about losing most of his territory.
Furious is an understatement. Pope Pius IX went from being a potential reformer to a staunch reactionary.
And what happened when they finally did take Rome?
In 1870, the French had to leave to fight Prussia, which opened the door. The Italian army breached the walls of Rome, and the Pope retreated into the Vatican.
He called himself a prisoner.
He declared himself a prisoner in the Vatican. He issued the non-expedit decree, which forbade Catholics from voting or participating in the new Italian government.
Wow. Imagine trying to build a new nation where the vast majority of your citizens are told by their spiritual leader that the government is illegitimate.
It was a nightmare for stability. The rift between church and state wasn't fully healed until Mussolini signed the Lateran Treaty in 1929.
So, politically, it's a bit of a shotgun wedding. But what about culturally? Section 5 talks about culture and legacy. How did they try to glue these people together?
Well, one major glue was opera.
Of course, it's Italy.
But specifically Giuseppe Verdi. His music became the soundtrack of the Risorgimento, the chorus Va Pensiero from the opera Nabucco.
About the Hebrew slaves.
Right, about them longing for their homeland. It was adopted by Italians as a song about their own longing for freedom.
And there was that secret code, right? Viva Verdi.
It was brilliant graffiti. If you wrote Viva Verdi on a wall, the Austrian police couldn't arrest you for liking a composer, but everyone knew it was an acronym.
Vittorio Emanuele Re d'Italia. Victor Emmanuel, King of Italy.
Exactly. It was a viral meme before the internet.
And language. I know that dialects in Italy are still very strong today. What was it like back then?
In 1861, it's estimated that only about 2.5%, maybe up to 10% of the population actually spoke Italian, what we consider standard Italian.
So what was everyone else speaking?
Venetian, Neapolitan, Sicilian, Piedmontese, these were distinct languages, often mutually unintelligible.
So how did they fix that?
A lot of it is credited to Alessandro Manzoni and his novel The Betrothed.
I Promessi Sposi.
Right. He famously rinsed his clothes in the Arno, meaning he revised his novel into the Tuscan dialect of Florence, establishing it as the model for the national language, gave the new nation a literary voice.
But even with a king and a language, the map wasn't quite done, was it? We mentioned irredentism.
Right, unfinished business. Even after taking Rome in 1870, there were Italians living outside the borders, specifically in Trento, Trieste, Istria, and Dalmatia, which were still under Austrian rule.
And this desire to redeem those lands?
That is the root of irredentism, Italia irredenta, unredeemed Italy. This drive to complete the unification is what ultimately dragged Italy into World War I.
They saw it as the last step.
They viewed World War I as the fourth war of independence.
It's amazing how long that thread runs.
It shapes everything. It even shaped the rise of fascism, this idea of the mutilated victory after World War I when they didn't get all the land they wanted.
So we've gone from a fragmented map to a unified kingdom, but at a high cost. As we wrap up, how should we summarize this?
I think we have to view the Risorgimento as a masterclass in political complexity. It wasn't one thing. It was the high idealism of Mazzini, the ruthless pragmatism of Cavour, and the romantic heroism of Garibaldi.
They all needed each other.
None of them could have done it alone.
If Mazzini hadn't dreamed it, Cavour wouldn't have had a cause to manage. If Garibaldi hadn't fought, Cavour wouldn't have had the pressure to act.
Exactly. But it also teaches us a cautionary lesson. Drawing lines on a map is the easy part. Building a nation is hard.
That brings us to the famous quote by Massimo Vesalia.
Italy has been made. Now it remains to make Italians da fat. Questi sanno da fare gli italiani.
That is such a powerful line. It acknowledges that the political structure was just the shell. The soul still had to be constructed.
And in many ways, looking at the regional identities in Italy today, that process is still ongoing.
What a journey. From charcoal burners plotting in basements to the King of Italy entering Rome. Thank you for walking us through this incredible slice of history.
My pleasure.
And to our listener, here is a final thought to mull over. We tend to think of nations as inevitable, like, of course there's an Italy. But looking at this history, you realize how easily it could have gone differently. What if Garibaldi had lost in Sicily? What if Napoleon III hadn't signed that armistice? How many nations are out there right now, existing only in the minds of idealists like Mazzini, waiting for their Cavour or Garibaldi to make them real?
That is a fascinating question.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time.
Arrivederci.